Hey, what's going on, good people? It's your boy James Harris, founder of Mental Health, author of Man Just Express Himself. Listen, I just want to tell you guys thank you so much for the love that you continue to show me on the movement, the book, and of course now this new YouTube channel. You guys definitely did your thing with liking, sharing, subscribing. Make sure you continue to do that. I definitely appreciate you. I didn't anticipate it to grow as rapidly as it did, but we are here. So with that being said, I will be introducing a new segment that I'll be interviewing different men throughout the community as well as in different places. And I wanted to do this so you guys can not only just hear my voice and the lessons that I provide for you guys on different knowledge and subject, but I thought it would be an interesting way for other men to tell their story of resilience and their road to their wellness journey. So we're going to be talking in these interviews about mental health, physical health, relationships, substance use recovery, early detection, different societal norms, relationships, athletes and mental health, maybe politics and mental health, and the stressors that's coming from that. And also masculinity, we might dive into that as well. So it's so many amazing men who have reached out that are open to tell their story. So, I'm gonna put something together, man. One Tuesday out of the month. I think it'll be interesting for you guys to hear that dynamic. So be willing and open to listen. I hope you guys continue to like, share, and subscribe. Make sure you do that. Make sure you also get the book, go support. With that being said, the guest that I got coming up is
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Happy to be here. I'm Stevon Lewis. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I'm based out of Southern California, Inglewood to be exact. My practice is completely virtual these days due to the pandemic, but I specialize in working with individuals struggling with imposter syndrome.
man. And the ironic thing is the reason I got you here is for that very reason, man. So many of our collective, I guess, mental health professionals, I've been seeing the different groups that we're in. I've been seeing it from legal people within the legal field. I've been seeing it from teachers who are struggling to, I guess, identify one with their position, and then two, questioning whether they belong in those rooms. So initially I was like, you know what, let me drop a video to help my people out. But then I realized, like, hey, let me hook my man up. Let me make sure that I'm sharing that wealth and passing it out. And I know you got an interesting perspective on things. So, let's get into it.
Yes,
What
sir.
is imposter syndrome?
For sure, for sure. So like it's funny you mentioned like all the people that seem to be impacted by it because a lot of my clients come from all walks of life. Like some are in entertainment, some are like you said in the legal profession, some medical field, just all over the map, right? And so I kind of got I guess the way I got into it was that I was working with clients, and so I started looking at the clients that I really, really enjoyed working with that like kind of brought me joy, right? And so what I found is that they had some commonalities, kind of to their like histories, like their kind of personal histories. And I was like, hey, like there's something going on here. Like these people don't know each other. Like how is it that their experiences are so similar? And come to find out, it's like it was a term imposter syndrome is really a term coined by Dr. Pauline Clance. She calls it imposter phenomenon. She works out of the University of Georgia, and so she kind of started noticing this stuff way back in like the late '70s. And what she noticed, kind of in the graduate program there for psychology, was that a lot of the women in the program didn't believe that they belonged, even though they were getting like high grades. That they constantly felt like they were fraud and that their male counterparts were much better than them. And so, like in my own practice, when I was working with clients, it was kind of this similar stuff of where people are killing it in life. I'm like, yo, like you're doing it, but they just like I don't know, like probably tomorrow everything's gonna go terrible and like I'm gonna lose it all. And it's like, well, why do you think that stuff? And so what I found is that like it's imposter syndrome is really this inability to kind of connect with your own success. And so as a result of that, you constantly feel like you're going to be found out to be a fraud. And so it comes across as like you being overly anxious about things that probably have little to no chance to happening.
Yeah, and I think that's the misconception about it because, like you said, there's so many different people in these dominant spaces, and in most of the times, I found it's African Americans who are thinking like, I'm in this white only space. All eyes are gonna be on me. Or
Yep.
women, I'm in this male dominant area. They're looking at me. So, how would you think that one should react in those spaces? Although they got the education, they got the
Mhm.
time in, they got the training, they got the same qualifications.
Yep.
But of course, you add in that sprinkle a little bit of that anxiety. People still feel that they're not as sufficient as those in that dominant area. So, what would you say?
Yeah, so like I think that like and again in the work I do, like I found that a lot of this stuff really starts earlier on, so that the individual who struggles with imposter syndrome probably in their childhood has some experience like earlier in life where they didn't feel kind of reinforced. They didn't feel like their self-worth or their abilities were kind of praised or were kind of respected or accepted. And so as a result of that, it's kind of sowed this little seed of self-doubt. Oftentimes clients I work with had like a parent that might have been like super critical of them as a kid, like sit up straight, hold your fork this way, like these little things, trying to make their kids better. But what happened is that the kids started to take on a belief about themselves that they do things wrong, right? And so, like as they continue to grow, that same feeling or self doubt continues to grow with them. So, like the parents were kind of critical, or the parents often didn't like praise them unless they did something super amazing, like you got to graduate college for you to be like, hey, good job. And it's like, well, what about all the stuff that led up to you being able to graduate college? Like none of that, all that stuff got ignored. It's only when you got the paperwork, that degree in hand is when it's like, okay, now you finally did something good. So like when you mentioned stuff about race, that absolutely comes in. I mean, you think about individuals in majority white spaces, like black folk or people of color, or you think about, like you said, women in tech, maybe men in nursing. And you start to see that, like, when I look around the room, I don't see a bunch of people that look like me. And so I start to question, like, well, if no one else in the room looks like me, then am I even in the right room? Because I'm looking for somewhere to connect to. There's nobody here, right? And then, like, part of being, black, when we're in a kind of, majority white space or dominant space, then it becomes this thing of where oftentimes our being doesn't get reinforced or valued, right? That we might be questioned a little bit more, the microaggressions that occur, and that stuff then starts to say like, well, it seems like I'm getting static or feedback that other people aren't getting, so then it must be something about me.
Yeah, man. So when I was conducting research, of course,
Mhm.
the early child development piece came in, but of course, I found that it was about, I want to say it was five different categories
Mhm.
that the imposter syndrome can be broken down to. I think it was perfectionist,
Yep.
um, the expert, and
Uh-huh. The
natural
individualist, the
genius.
soloist.
My
Yeah.
man, there you go.
Yep.
Yeah. So
Yep.
if you
Yep.
want to touch on those five, man, that'll be great for the people. And I'm sure, like once I drop this video, somebody might get the insight and probably see, like, oh man, they'll probably be able to identify
Mhm.
and make those subtle changes as needed. Again, because
Yeah.
they qualified, they deserve to be there. They got the education experience.
Right.
They just don't have that self gratification, knowing that I'm dope as hell. I did everything needed to do to be here. So let me
Right.
live this experience. So if you want to
Yeah,
touch on
for
those
sure.
five, man.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, like that's kind of what you're talking about is kind of the thing I do is like, if you weren't supposed to be there, then I think by now, as long as you've been doing the stuff you've been doing, that like somebody would have found out, right? Like if you didn't really have the talent or the skills. Yeah. So they're like they've identified kind of five different types of imposters is what they call them. There's, like you said, is the individualist or the soloist is what they label it. This is the person who has to kind of do everything by themselves, that like if they get any level of support, then it diminishes the quality of what they've accomplished, which doesn't really make sense, right? It's like, when you think about like team sports or stuff in that nature, it's like, well, we all had some help to get where we are. And that doesn't mean that, just because like, I use a ton of analogies. So like if I'm playing basketball, right, if somebody passes me the ball and I score the basket, that doesn't mean that the basket doesn't, it counts for less, right? Like it still counts for the same 2 points, regardless of whether they pass it to me or if I just, took the ball out and like took it all the way down court myself. And so what happens is that those individuals who are kind of the soloists or the individualists, like they don't want any assistance or support, because if they had assistance or support, then it says that they didn't really do it themselves, and that therefore then they probably really wouldn't have been able to accomplish what they did without the help, which we know not to be, 100% true. So then, like, if you want me to just kind of go into all of them,
Yeah, you can touch on
okay, for sure.
maybe one or two more if you want to.
Yeah, yeah. So then, like the other one I think that's really big is like the perfectionist. You talk about that one, right? So like the perfectionists, these are people who like either what I accomplished is perfect or it's trash, right? So it's like I had to give like a perfect product, or if I see one flaw in it, then it negates all of what I've accomplished. Like everything was terrible, right? And it's like, well, there needs to be some sort of balance between those. That like if we accomplish something and we work hard and we do something, even if it's not perfect, which I don't believe that perfection really exists. Like I don't think that, I think it's a place we try to get to, but I don't think anybody ever does anything perfect. Then it's like, it can't be trash. Like there has to be some middle ground. But these guys feel like, well, everything has to be perfect, decent, and in order. And if it's not, then it doesn't matter how everybody else feels about it. To me, I feel like what I accomplished wasn't really that great, because I'm focusing only on the parts that didn't go well, and I'm ignoring all of the stuff that did go well, right? And so then these individuals are feeling terrible or horrible, or feeling like they didn't accomplish something because they've not paid attention to any of the success or the good parts of the things they did. And I think the other one that's really probably like you mentioned was the expert. These are people who have to kind of research everything or get kind of all the information about something before they can feel confident in being able to speak or talk about it, right? So like I've had to, for me, then as an example, I would have had to read all the research that's ever been published on imposter syndrome, have talked to all the people that, the experts that have done it, for me to be able to say like, all right, maybe I know something about it. But there's usually still this tendency to say like, well, I don't know everything, right? So it's still like, I know some stuff, but I still don't know everything. This belief that like, even if I have done all this research or study, it's because I'm fearing that somebody's going to point out that I didn't know this one thing, and if I didn't know that, then I don't know anything. And I think again, it's that all or nothing, that dichotomous thinking, that if some part of it isn't the way we tell ourselves it's supposed to be, then it's horrible or it doesn't count.
So, in practice, if you have one that's struggling, whether they're a professional or
Mhm.
somebody that's trying to achieve something, how are you addressing it? Are you addressing the anxiety? Are you addressing the self doubt? What's your take on how to assist somebody dealing with the fraudulent mindset, or even if you're going back to the past to where they didn't receive as much past, like what's your take on it? How are you dealing with it?
For sure. So, like in my treatment of people that are struggling with imposter syndrome, I kind of first focus on making people aware of what's going on for them. Some oftentimes people aren't clear or even aware of the stuff they're doing to themselves, so they aren't aware of that inner negative dialogue that they're kind of saying about, I don't have what it takes, so that I need to be perfect, or I need to know everything, right, or I need to do it by myself. And so, kind of making them aware of that stuff through like their language. So I'm a big police of people's language. So when I hear a bunch of kind of demands like I need, I have to, I must, that says then that if you get anything less than that, then it's horrible or it's unacceptable. And so, getting people to get that awareness, and then using that awareness to get them to gain some insight into why this happened, right? So, getting them to be aware of what's going on, and then assisting them gaining some insight around why that started happening. And what you'll find is people will say like, oh yeah, so I remember the first time like I saw my mom do this thing, and like so I just watched her, and this is what she did to herself. So I took that on and made it my own. Or as a kid, I used to do this and I would get in trouble for this sort of stuff. And so as a result of that, then, I told myself that I don't really have what it takes. And then the other thing is like I start to give them practical tools to kind of combat that stuff. So I use things like thought records, so that people can kind of write down those thoughts and then kind of start to reframe them with thoughts or thinking that might be more appropriate for their situation. I have people kind of assess in their environment, like the objective evidence, because oftentimes, like I was saying earlier, people will ignore all the evidence that's good and they will only focus on the bad stuff. And so I force them to say, hey, this thing happened. Why did that happen? How did that happen? Like at some point, you have to get to a place of where you're involved in it. You had a role. So really pushing them to kind of take like things like an evidence sheet where they write down stuff that they've accomplished, so that when they start to feel less than, they can refer to it and be like, hey, this happened. I scored 40 points in this game. I put that presentation up, I got this promotion, those things can't be taken away. I started this podcast and, like, so those sorts of things like, hey, that you did that. So regardless of like if you're doing it now or what happened, like that is yours. You don't get to take that away. Just like if you won a Grammy or something like that, hey, every record might not be a Grammy, but you did win one, and you got to own that. And so doing those sorts of things help them kind of to start to peel back or dismantle some of that belief they have about themselves.
Yeah, so I found that like when I'm working with somebody, I found that it was, in addition to those self-defeating thoughts or that self-doubt, it was a
Mm-hmm.
lot of comparing their self or that journey to other people, and that right there can hinder it too. Like, oh man, like so and so is this far ahead or so and so is all the way back there. I'm right here. Like, where should I be? Like, yo, you can't compare your journey to nobody else. Where is it that you want to be? Where is it that
Right,
you're trying to go?
right.
Um, so all of those things are helpful. And I think right here, this you did an amazing job with summarizing everything as well as providing insight. And I'm definitely appreciative for you. And I think people will be able to benefit from this, whether it's our colleagues that are in the mental health space or those lawyers that's reaching out.
Yeah.
And there's so many different people that ask me in the inbox or in email about the imposter syndrome. So I think in 2020 that word was thrown around a lot. That and
Right.
toxic, like you
Yeah.
seen that
Yeah.
everywhere,
Yeah.
and people don't really have insight on it. So of course our job is to spread as much awareness as we can and do our due diligence and help people. So I'm glad you was able to come on and shed a little bit light. Is there anything else you want to mention about imposter syndrome before we wrap
Mhm.
up?
Yeah, so like I think that part where you just mentioned about kind of that inner negative dialogue, like I kind of try to personify that voice and call it the inner bully, so that people can kind of have something tangible to attach it to, right? So that this is comes from inside of you, and so we accept it. It's just like a real bully. It wants to make us feel terrible or horrible about ourselves and beat us up. And if it were a person, you tell that person to get out your face, but because it comes from inside and we have this feeling, we say, well, it must be true. And part of what I'm saying is that we've got to challenge that voice because it tells us things about ourselves that are negative, but it doesn't provide a bunch of evidence to support. So it's like, it tries to get you to believe that, you messed up and that it's the worst thing ever and that you don't have what it takes. But if that were the case, then how did you get promotion? Like, you're that good that you can fool everyone into believing that you have something you don't. Like, usually people get found out to be a fraud, especially in this culture we live in now. Like you said, with the comparison, people are constantly looking at everybody. So if you don't have what it takes, this call out culture gonna get you. Like, you're not gonna be able to hide in today's world at all.
Oh man, listen, I definitely appreciate it. Anything you want to drop? What's next for you, man? I think last year or the year before, me and my lady was watching the show, man, and we seen you creeping through with Spirit. How's that going?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I was on that initial season of Love Goals on the Oprah Winfrey Network with Spirit. Did season one. It was myself and Keandra were kind of the other mental health experts to support Spirit and kind of behind the scenes with some of the therapy with the cast members or whatnot. Did that. Then I've been doing some stuff. I did the Love Hour podcast with Kev on stage and his wife a couple times. And then now I'm in the process of working on a digital course for imposter syndrome so that, I can have something where people who, don't have access to me directly can do kind of a self-paced thing, still get some interventions, get some support, have some videos from me kind of talking about this stuff or talking them through the different, units or whatnot, and hopefully trying to get that out by end of the first quarter, but definitely this year for sure.
No, man. Look, I knew you was working on some stuff. That's why I didn't want to give as much details here as I can because I got tons of questions I could have asked. But I think
Yep, yep.
people with this interview have enough to where they can one reach out to you and or do more research themselves. So with that being said, how can people find you, man? You can drop your socials,
Yep.
your email, your website, anything that you need to.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So I can be found. I make it real easy for people to find me. I have also my mom, gave me a unique name. So Stevon is not really like most of those names. So if you type in Stevon Lewis in Google, people will find Stevon. But my website is www.stevonlewis.com. And then on social media, I'm at Stevon Lewis MFT. Most active on Instagram though. So if people really want to see me, I try to put out some content little tidbits to, talk about some of the concepts and how to deal with imposter syndrome. But I'm most active on Instagram. So, follow me on Instagram. That's where I'll keep up to date on all the stuff that I've got going on. And, when that course drops, you'll hear it there first.
My man, hey, as soon as it dropped, man, I too will promote it. I definitely thank you, man. Appreciate you.
Appreciate it.
Um, Listen, man, as soon as I wrap this up, I'm definitely gonna put it out there. Thanks for everybody tuning in. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Make sure you also check out my man Stevon. Great wealth of information on all of his platforms, website, as well as social media. So I'll catch you guys next time. Hopefully you learned some. I definitely appreciate it.